So Rekieta update last 3 weeks. So not much has happened really in the last 3 weeks. The body cam footage being delayed was one thing. Immediately after that, Oliver Bromka, who is a elected attorney, I'm not sure if he's elected in Minnesota or North Dakota, but he's a registered licensed attorney on the bar for both Minnesota and North Dakota. Um, and he is Hardin's lawyer. Hardin represents our interests, but for various reasons, you never want to be your own lawyer, even as a lawyer. So he's had Oliver Bromka assist him. Bromka filed an intervention in Nick Rekieta's criminal case to oppose the decision to reclassify evidence that was considered as a matter of course as not received, which makes it unavailable to the public. In particular, the one thing that happened is that the judge, or sorry, not the judge, actually, yes, the judge and the prosecutor both knew that Hardin was in the process of acquiring this footage. And as I mentioned on my last stream, when the prosecutor and the judge rushed this motion through to reclassify that evidence as received but not submitted into evidence, they erred because when a motion is filed in court, it is supposed to represent all parties. And the judge and the prosecutor both knew that Hardin would oppose this. And in the instance where a non-party has an interest in something, the prosecutor is actually supposed to represent their interests and take a much more neutral and self-critical approach. Normally, when you're just having adversarial filings, you have like the plaintiff and the defendant. You're supposed to represent your case as strongly as possible. But in the instance where you have a third party that has an interest that's not a party to the case, you're supposed to be very reasonable. And you're supposed to say, well, judge, I think that this evidence should be reclassified. However, there's an unrepresented party. So you're supposed to play devil's advocate and say, so they would probably say X, Y, Z. I think that I'm in the right, but they would probably make these legal arguments. And that's supposed to create like a paper trail where down the road, if that party does intervene, their interests are actually represented. So it's a very weird legal thing where you're supposed to not be super adversarial. That did not happen. So the prosecutor just said, yeah, seal this shit up. Nobody disagrees with this decision whatsoever. So just do it right now. And the judge said, okay, fine. So the prosecutor lied. He knew that there were adversarial interests. In fact, I know that he knew that there were adversarial interests because he emailed the attorney immediately afterwards and told Hardin, yeah, we sealed this shit up. Eat shit. So he knew that there were adversarial interests and did not represent them at all, which is a bad thing to do. You're not supposed to do that. So that will form the basis of the criminal intervention because they're in the wrong to do that. So the second thing is that Hardin, and this is breaking news, I think, once I get my... There we go. Okay. Behold, Matthew D. Hardin, plaintiff, versus Eric Tollinson in his official capacity as sheriff, the Candy, Ohio Sheriff's Office. Carol Coleman in her official capacity as records supervisor. Kelsey Baker in her official capacity as Candy, Ohio County Administrator. Plaintiff Matthew D. Hardin, hereinafter plaintiff, by and through undersigned counsel, files this complaint against defendants Sheriff Eric Tollinson in his official capacity. I already read that. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13.08, plaintiff seeks release of improperly withheld government data under the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act, and alleges the following. So this is now filed. You can see that little thing on the top right. Minnesota Court Records Online. Received literally just now. Actually, it was received a little while ago, but it's not made public until the clerk receives it and marks it received, which just happened. So we're suing. Not me, actually. I have no party in this. So if Hardin does win $1 million, as Rekieta would wish him, for this case, he keeps all of it. And that's just my luck. I have a feeling that Hardin's going to win like $1 million in punitive damages from the county for these fucking games that they're playing. And then, of course, I may receive none of it because I have no interest in it. It was Hardin who filed the request, chap. This is 12 pages, and then I guess the rest is evidence. The rest, okay, so I know what the exhibits are going to be. Um, the the basis of this complaint is that Hardin went through all the appropriate legal venues to file this complaint. He went to the judge. The judge accepted his request. The judge granted him what he asked for and administratively said, you must release this footage. Then he went to the sheriff and said, Sheriff, look, you didn't release it before when we asked you nicely, but now the judge is telling you to release the footage. And the sheriff says, no, I will ignore this court order, stalker. Goodbye. So the sheriff refused to acknowledge the court order. Then he has to, another lawyer advised him to file a complaint with the Minnesota Department of Administration. And the Department of Administration gave an opinion that was affirmative and said, yeah, they should release the footage because why would he ignore a court order? Then he showed the sheriff that, and he said, okay, give me until June 2nd. And then days before June 2nd, like May 30th, like the day of the stream, the prosecuting attorney files a request to seal the footage, and then the judge agrees within 50 minutes of court opening the next day. So it was like this very calculated maneuver to seal the records that had already been granted approval to be made public and that the Department of Administration had already agreed should be made public. So it was like this very collaborative effort. And these attachments are going to be all the steps, all the time, all the effort that it took for Hardin to go through this the correct way to get these files released and being granted the files to be released and then them changing their mind last second. So that's what that is. I haven't been able to read through it because it literally just happened and I just published it. But yeah, we are suing. And this is only prong 2 of 3. There's something else that Hardin wants to do that's very cheeky. And when he does it, it's probably going to be one of the only times that this has ever happened in litigation history. Basically, Hardin's going to tackle all 3 prongs of the justice system at once, and we're in an effort to get the body cam footage shot. Oh, we we have a constitutional right to see evidence. I remind you, here's the main thing, right? Here's the main crux of this, is that Nick Rekieta very arrogantly declared that the Candiota County Sheriff's Department had violated the constitutional rights of his co-defendant April Imholt and not properly Mirandized her. Not Mirandizing a defendant is one of the most egregious violations that a police officer can do in the course of an investigation, and it completely throws out any information obtained as a result of that. So, to prove this, he submitted the body cam evidence. In his own attorney submitted this into evidence, and it was considered before the omnibus hearing, and then later they didn't pursue it because the body cam evidence, as it turned out, actually showed her being Mirandized. So his contention is that because he didn't actually go for using this as evidence because it was evidence against him, that therefore he didn't actually submit it into evidence to begin with, which is a lie. Hardin's position, our position, is that it was submitted in evidence, so he has no right to complain. And then also probably, I would imagine, that he asserts other justifications, such as the rumors that Rekieta had started in regards to evidence being planted and to misconduct by the sheriff's department, by conspiracy against him, and so on and so forth. And then also confusing things like Jesse published like a bunch of AI generated fake photos of the house, and that also led to further confusion. Oh, and statements that Rekieta had made, such as the sheriff lied in order to get his children taken away by saying that there was some dust on the vents, and therefore the dust on the vents meant his whole house was filthy. So it's like, which is it? Did the sheriff lie to get his kids taken away by saying that his house was messy and unlivable and uninhabitable because there was some dust on the vents, or was there actual trash in the house? There's a genuine public interest in knowing what the fuck is happening in the legal system. And we're going to get it, is what I'm saying. So there's that. The only other thing that happened with Rekieta was that Gabe Hoffman apparently is trying to debut as a streamer. I don't know what he's doing. He made a stream that was generally not well received. He went live with Keanu, that woman that epically owned Rekieta, a couple weeks ago. And basically, he just he said that Rekieta had been physically violent towards Kayla and his kids, and the whole stream was underwhelming and poorly presented, and people were very dissatisfied with it. I'll just say that was the consensus, the takeaway that I saw.